Donald Trump just called a television network in the middle of a war, not to announce a ceasefire, not to declare a strategic breakthrough, but to whisper a few reassuring words into the ears of panicking traders. One phone call, a vague statement suggesting that the war with Iran is almost over. And like magic, the S&P 500 erased its losses for the day. Oil prices, which had been racing toward $115 per barrel, suddenly dropped nearly 30% within minutes. Two realities now exist under the same clock. On one side, the Secretary of Defense tells 60 Minutes that this war has only just begun. On the other side, the President of the United States tells CBS that it is practically finished. One government, two completely opposite messages. And behind both of them lies a phone call to Vladimir Putin, a call that should deeply concern anyone watching this situation. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly what just happened. Why the administration's own words now expose contradictions they can no longer hide. And why the geopolitical ground shifted today in a way most people still haven't realized. Imagine you hired a contractor to renovate your house. He tells you it will take 5 weeks, but after just 6 days, he calls and says, "Don't worry, it's practically finished." So you call the foreman, and the foreman says, "We've barely started." Meanwhile, the contractor is on the phone with your neighbor, the one who has been sabotaging you for years, and that neighbor announces publicly that he's going to help the contractor find a solution. How confident would you feel about that renovation? Keep that image in mind, because that is exactly what happened today. So let me ask you something. How many contradictions does it take before we stop calling it strategy and start calling it chaos? How we got here. When the United States launched its military campaign against Iran, the stated objectives were broad and ambitious: overthrow the Iranian regime, destroy nuclear enrichment capabilities, neutralize ballistic missile threats, dismantle Iran's proxy military networks. According to officials in the administration, the expected timeline was 4 to 5 weeks. The language was firm, absolute, unambiguous. This was supposed to be a demonstration of overwhelming American power capable of reshaping the Middle East. Day 6, reality changes the script. By the 6th day, the situation looked very different. Iran's navy had suffered significant damage. Communication infrastructure had been degraded. The Air Force had taken serious hits. But Iran did not collapse, the regime did not fold, and power did not pass to a moderate reformist or a pro-Western figure. Instead, it passed to Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of Ali Khamenei, a man widely viewed as even more hardline than his father. The very outcome the war was supposed to prevent happened within the first week, and that is when Donald Trump picked up the phone. Exhibit 1, the CBS call. About 1 hour before markets closed on an extremely volatile trading day, Trump called CBS. His message was carefully calibrated, not for military audiences, not for diplomats, but for Wall Street. He said, "The war with Iran is almost finished. Iran no longer has a navy. Iran has lost communications. Iran's air force is gone. The United States is ahead of schedule." And the markets responded instantly. The S&P 500 erased its losses. Oil prices dropped sharply from their peak near $115 per barrel. One analyst summed it up bluntly: "Everyone understands Trump called to deliver a vague but reassuring comment before the close to push the markets upward. The war was not over." The objectives had not been achieved. But the stock market needed a story, and Trump gave it one. This isn't strategy, it's market manipulation, dressed as commander-in-chief messaging. Exhibit 2, the Putin call. Before speaking to CBS, Trump had already spoken with Vladimir Putin. And what happened next should raise alarms. According to the Kremlin's official readout, which the administration did not dispute, Putin offered a proposal to end the war quickly. He then publicly announced that he and Trump would work together to find a solution. Think about that. In the middle of a war, the President of the United States called the leader of the country that may be benefiting most from that war. High oil prices have delivered enormous profits to Russia, especially after the Trump administration lifted key sanctions that allowed Russia to sell more oil internationally. And now reports suggest the administration may lift even more sanctions, allowing Russia to sell even more oil. Russia hasn't fired a single shot in this conflict. It doesn't need to. It's winning simply by watching. And now Washington has invited Moscow to help write the ending. Exhibit 3, the Pentagon contradiction. On Friday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth appeared on 60 Minutes. His message was the exact opposite of Trump's. He said clearly, "What I want your viewers to understand is that this is only the beginning." He described the first 6 days of operations. He talked about more ships to sink, more targets to strike, more time needed to secure critical shipping routes. He called these early steps. Then, days later, Trump told CBS the war was almost finished. And it goes even further. After Trump's interview, the United States Department of Defense released a statement saying, "We have only just begun fighting. The president says it's ending. The Secretary of Defense says it's beginning. The Pentagon says it's beginning. That's not a communication problem." That's an administration at war with its own war. Why this situation is dangerous here is what makes this situation structurally unstable. There is no visible strategist in charge, no one quietly building alliances, no one positioning the long-term outcome. Instead, what we see is raw force without a coherent objective, public contradictions within 72 hours, and requests for help from adversaries, Iran's position. Meanwhile, Iranian leadership is projecting the opposite message. Foreign policy advisor Kamal Karazi appeared in international media and stated, "Iran's military remains strong. Iran produces its own weapons. Iran depends on no other country. This war is an existential threat." And when asked about a ceasefire, he responded, "I see no space for diplomacy because Donald Trump deceived others and broke his promises." Trump's own messaging. At a Republican seminar held at his Trump National Doral Miami resort, Trump described the war as a short excursion. He imitated missile sounds with his mouth. He insulted the Iranian people. He mocked political opponents. And in the same speech, he discussed dismantling the healthcare system. This is not the image of a wartime strategist projecting strength. It looks more like confidence theater while the structure collapses around him. What this means for you: start with energy prices. Oil approached $115 per barrel during the conflict. Even after Trump's calming statement, prices remain volatile. Every increase in oil prices spreads through the entire economy. Transportation costs, food prices, industrial production, heating bills, your grocery bill, and daily commute are tied directly to this war. Military costs. According to CBS News, the United States has already lost 11 MQ-9 Reaper drones. MQ-9 Reaper. These are among the most advanced unmanned systems in the American arsenal. Losing 11 in a few days is a material loss, a strategic signal, a message to every watching adversary. This campaign is not the easy operation described on television. Diplomatic fallout. According to the Washington Post, Israel is increasingly nervous and discussing exit strategies privately. Israeli officials reportedly doubt that regime change in Iran would actually serve their interests. Meanwhile, Emmanuel Macron has warned that the war could last several more weeks. Once a coalition begins to fracture, it rarely reforms. The cracks become the new architecture. 3 possible scenarios. 1. Managed de-escalation. Trump declares victory regardless of battlefield reality. He frames damage to Iran's navy and missile infrastructure as mission accomplished. Markets stabilize, oil prices fall, but Iran's nuclear capabilities remain intact. Mojtaba consolidates power. Russia emerges stronger. The banner says victory. Reality says stalemate in a tuxedo. 2. Escalation spiral. Iran intensifies asymmetric warfare. Proxy forces activate in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. The Strait of Hormuz becomes a real choke point. Oil surges past $150 per barrel. The global economy slides into recession, and the conflict expands into a regional war. 3. The Putin realignment. Unable to find an exit, Trump increasingly relies on Vladimir Putin to broker peace. Russia positions itself as the indispensable mediator. In exchange, Moscow demands concessions on Ukraine, on sanctions, on European security architecture. The war ends not because America wins, but because Russia decides it's time to get paid. The lesson the world is learning. The gap between stated objectives and real results has already passed the credibility threshold. The administration promised regime change. The regime became more radical. It promised eliminating the nuclear threat. The nuclear infrastructure remains intact. It promised American strength. The Pentagon contradicted the president within 72 hours, and the country that may have gained the most from this war is Russia. Even if the war ended tomorrow, every government, military, and intelligence agency on Earth has already absorbed the lesson. American strategic messaging cannot be relied upon to remain consistent from Friday to Monday. War objectives shift with market performance. And when pressure rises, the first call goes not to allies, but to Moscow. So the real question now is this: did Trump surrender to Iran, or did he simply reveal that there was never a coherent plan to begin with? Is this managed chaos or simply chaos? And when the next crisis arrives, and it will, who will believe the timelines, the objectives, or the promise that this time will be different? Leave your answer in the comments. I read every one of them. And subscribe, because the next chapter is coming fast. The confrontation in the Strait of Hormuz, sanctions negotiations with Russia, Israel's quiet search for an exit. This story is not slowing down. Don't look away.